Hello and welcome to this episode of Not Just Ghost Stories. I'm your host Josh, joined by Jackie and Laura. Today we are going to be talking about Bobby Mackey's. I think everybody kind of knows what that is. It's in Newport, Kentucky. It has a pretty decent history. And Jackie, would you like to give us an overview of that history?
Why, sure. This history is going to be a little different because I'm going to give you the history of the land, but I'm also going to touch upon the rumors or the events that most people assumed happened at Bobby Mackey's. Okay, Wilder was founded by the Revolutionary War veteran Major David Lech. The railroad was put in the mid-1800s, and it runs behind 44 Licking Pike, which is where Bobby Mackey's was, just up from the Licking River. In 1850, the largest meat packing plant with a slaughterhouse was built on the land. It had a well where the blood and guts were thrown from the slaughterhouse. The opening of that well was in the basement of Bobby Mackey's. In the late 1890s, the slaughterhouse was closed down. It sat vacant until it was eventually demolished. There were rumors that satanic cults met there, and sacrifices, both human and animal, were performed and dumped down the well. Again, just rumors. In 1920, a distillery with gambling and prostitution was built on the property. 1933, Buck Brady purchased the speakeasy and renamed it Primrose. The nightclub did so well it came to the attention of the mafia, who in 1946 sent Red Masterson to persuade Buck to sell. Buck declined and got the drop on Masterson and shot him in the legs. Buck was arrested for disturbing the peace, and after escaping those charges, he sold the business to the Cleveland Forest Syndicate and moved to Florida. In 1965, he shot himself. The mob reopened the club in 1947 as the Latin Quarters. In 1950, the law was starting to crack down on the mafia. In 1961, the Latin Quarters closed. The building had several businesses come and go until a biker bar called the Hard Rock Cafe, no affiliation to today's Hard Rock Cafe, closed after a series of shootings. In April of 1978, Bobby Mackey purchased the club and opened it as a honky-tonk bar in the fall. In the winter of 2024, the old building was demolished. Supposedly they're building a new one on site. The two rumors that I'd like to touch upon that everybody associates with Bobby Mackey's are the murder of Pearl Bryan in 1883. Her body was found in a field 2 miles from the site of Bobby Mackey's. She was 5 months pregnant and had been decapitated. Her head was never found. Rumors said it had been disposed of in the well of the slaughterhouse. Her boyfriend and his friend were tried and hung for the murder. They proclaimed their innocence right up to the very end where they were hung. In 1950, the owner of a club and a member of the mafia, daughter Johanna, fell in love with the dealer in the casino. In some versions, she's a dancer in the club. She became pregnant. Her father found out and had the man killed. She killed herself in her dressing room by drinking poison. Neither of these women can actually be linked to the property by any proof that has been found. But these are the rumors that go around and may or may not contribute to the haunting of the place.
All right. Thank you for that little bit of history. Now, what I will say about, let's talk about just Newport, Kentucky, just for a second. Back in the day, it was known as a large mafia running through Newport. There actually is proof of that through there. A lot of history in Newport itself with, gambling bars and everything else. So this is actually just kind of lumped in a little bit with that mafia history, right?
You see it referenced a lot of places. It was Las Vegas before Las Vegas existed.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Just to give you a reference of.
Yeah. So, Bobby Mackey's, a lot of people know the different stories that come out of there. There are some of them that are just stories, obviously not, anything history backed. The big thing is Bobby Mackey himself wrote a song about Johanna, right? That was her name. So wrote a song about her. although we can't find anything about her, right? So that's kind of like one of the weird things to me overall. But our investigation, it was really cool doing that investigation at Bobby Mackey's. It's one of those ones where it's in our hometown. It's not far from where any of us live. However, we just never really did it because honestly, it's not affordable all the time to do someplace like a Bobby Mackey's for how much they give you. But there was a group of us that got together and said we got to do this before they knock this building down. The building was pretty dilapidated. So we're going to
Pretty,
talk.
pretty.
We're going to talk about our investigation, and not so much about what was happening at Bobby Mackey's before we ever got there, just kind of what we found, and then us trying to back up that history. So we were with a small group. There was just some different people that we ghost hunt with. Carrie, which everybody's heard if you've listened to any of our past, she was there. And we've had a few others that were with
Well,
us.
and Carrie had history. She used to live close to the bar, and she, as she said, she spent many a nights at the bar, and she actually knew and talked to Carl, who was the groundskeeper there or caretaker there.
Caretaker of the place. And I had frequented that bar in my younger days, here and there. But we started our investigation. We kind of did a little walk around, got to know the building a little bit. We started everything down in the basement because, for one, it was cold. So for some reason, we always do everything in the cold. But two, we were like, it's just going to be easier to start down there. We thought at that time. Now, we were spread kind of everywhere. The one thing I remember a lot about Bobby Mackey's for me was shadow movements. There was just kind of weird shadow movements throughout the basement. I sat on the one side. There was a big garage door that was there, and I was just kind of sat up against it. And yeah, I was getting some wind, so I couldn't really feel if there was a coldness coming through or anything. But out of the corner of my eye, I would see something move, and then all of a sudden, I'm looking down the main way throughout all the way to the main entrance that you come in, and I see something moving back and forth, and I'm like, there was a lot of shadow play down there.
We had a laser grid on it too, and the laser grid kept cutting out.
The laser grid would cut out,
blink in and off, yeah.
And it was a little weird, just sitting there, just watching that. At one point, I think, Laura, you were off in what they called the room of faces, I think.
Yeah.
And then Jackie, I think you might have been in there too, and I was kind of off by myself just watching some of this, put up laser grids, can't find anything. Where the old, I guess they were dressing rooms.
Yes.
In there, I was kind of close to that, so maybe something was coming out of there. I couldn't tell exactly where it was moving. It was very dark down there with just a hair bit of light here and there. That's where you would see the movement coming through. At first, of course, I had my flashlight and I'd flick it on, saying, well, maybe it's a river rat. You get those down there. You're close to the Licking River, So, but there wasn't any actually signs of anything, actual live there.
There wasn't, and which is kind of odd because the basement's dirt floor and old and got stuff shoved everywhere. But I've never seen any animals down there.
No, not even any kind of trace of any animal.
Yeah.
Maybe they know it was a slaughterhouse at one time.
Yeah. And they were like, we don't want to be here. So then, we also went to the well area. Now that's the big area, the quote unquote demonic area that you see people talk about all the time. What did you guys feel about that area?
It didn't really bother me.
Yeah.
That, I think they referred to it as what? The pit? No, that's somewhere else.
The portal to hell.
Portal to hell.
Portal to hell.
So it's filled in now, so you can see the indent, but you can't really. You wouldn't even know it was used to be a tunnel, and that's what I'm thinking. It was that it used to be a tunnel to the river to get rid of wash away the blood and stuff, but I don't know if that was legal back then, so I don't want to say anything about it. And you're right, because I was in there and it was sort of a nothing's happening, but yet something is going to happen. And I did ask you, and you said no. This was the best room for you. You
Yeah.
didn't feel anything.
Which we know portals open and close, so maybe it was a timing factor for us. But quite honestly, I would rather be in that basement by myself than in the attic.
Yeah.
That was me. I was more uncomfortable up there.
Yeah, the attic was kind of wild.
Yeah. Now I will say in the basement, I had the SLS down there. I was trying to go more on the scientific side of things. I wasn't really getting a lot in the SLS, except for in the room of faces. Now, what that is, it was a concrete room. Uh, the walls, when you had a flashlight on it, just looked regular. When you had turned your flashlight off and you just had like a red light, the shadow cast that the wall gave was really odd, and it did kind of look like faces poking out of the wall to me. But that was the only place where I was getting any type of SLS activity.
And that room, to me, I would explain it as it felt like it had tension in it.
Yeah.
Also, though, remember the last quarter of that room, they had I think they had it. I don't know if they had it blocked off, but back there wasn't that the electro panel
Yes.
and stuff like that.
There was some panels and stuff there.
So you do have possible high EMF fields, although nothing came across.
Well, on K2, walking through there, I mean, I wasn't getting anything near that because it was kind of like a cage that they had set off there. I wasn't getting anything from there, but I was getting weird readings on K2 right in the middle of the room and trying to figure out. There was no electric running on the ceiling there. There was nothing, that I could figure out on the floor. But it'd be right in the middle, and I would walk off, and it would kind of fade out, and it would pick up a little bit closer to the door. However, there was a piece of equipment near that door that I was picking up EMF fields on. So now, was it because of that equipment in the middle of the room, but it also faded out before it came back up when I got to that piece of equipment?
I almost wonder if that room wasn't some sort of like office or something in that nature, because it seemed like if I said, and just tried to picture things in there, it was of people arguing.
Yeah.
Well, if you think about it, when it was mafia owned and stuff, there were the dressing rooms down there, so that would have been where the performers got ready for the show and stuff, and probably other things involved with the show too.
Yeah, there probably was some.
Yeah.
Oh, you're gonna.
Maybe a green room style type of thing could have been down there too. I mean, it's hard telling. All we can do is, it was a slaughterhouse slash packing house. One of the biggest in the area, turned into a bar.
The slaughterhouse was demolished.
Okay.
So,
but the foundation of some of that slaughterhouse was still there.
Still there. Yeah.
And what we know from dealing with like Indian things, it only had to happen there. Those structures don't have to still be present always for the imprint to remain.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, it was an odd place. Now, going upstairs, what I will say is the only place on the main area, like where the dance floor is at, where the stage is at, where the mechanical bull is, the only place I really felt anything strange was actually in the bathrooms.
Yes.
Now, Jackie, you have a story coming out of the bathroom, right, that you got. You want to talk about that?
All right. There were two people in the bathroom. I don't think they were dousing and stuff. So I went in and I doused because I've been in that bathroom before and I knew I wasn't alone. Most of everything coming out of Bobby Mackey says the men's room is where you're going to get somebody watching you. But I've been in the women's room and I knew I wasn't alone, even though there weren't living people with me. So I brought out my dowsing pendulum and I was dowsing, and basically I found out I was talking to a guy, And when I asked him what he did, he said he's a leg breaker. He was the man that was sent if you did something to the mafia they didn't like, if you owed him money, he was sent after you, and he would kill you, break your legs, whatever he had to do. I remember I asked him, I said, did you enjoy your job? And he said, yes, he did.
Now,
Well-
did you tell him he was in the women's room?
He's a leg breaker. Okay. He enjoys his job. I'm like, you can be wherever you want.
I mean, there truly are sadistic people out there.
Yeah.
I mean,
But I didn't think he he just seemed like, this is my job. This is what I do. Yes, I enjoy it. But he didn't seem like, he didn't come across as some weird psycho like you think they are, like I eat people or something like that. No,
Okay.
this is my job. This is what I have to do.
he was just, I do.
Yeah, do what I have to do.
Yeah.
To get my job done.
Now, in the men's room, I did hang out in there for a couple minutes by myself. I will say there's a strange feeling that comes from the men's room. I don't know if that's just the age, of the building. I didn't feel like I was being watched or nothing happened to me in there. But it was just that we talked about it on our last show, the energy inside there. It was that gut feeling like, I don't think I'm alone, but at the same time, I feel like anybody who's in here is not going to answer me. Like I just was part of this.
There's a presence, but you weren't worried about it.
I was this large part of a crowd, overall, that just another person standing there. It's kind of how I felt about it. Now, there was some shadow figure on the main floor. I believe you and me, Laura.
Yeah, we sat at a
The very back
table that was
corner
back in the corner.
In the main room where the bull
where the
is.
mechanical bull was.
Yeah.
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 Or was.
And we seen, shadows.
Yeah. We couldn't get him to respond to us. We tried.
But a lot of the shadows were not like people figure. They were just
Blobs.
shadows that didn't have any recollection with anything going on.
I'm almost wondering if it was more residual style type of stuff that was happening in there at certain areas. Just energy left over from the many years of use. It could have been a possibility, right?
Or we also know, of course, Kentucky's all Indian and stuff. It could have been Indians, like on a hunt.
Well, yeah,
or-
I mean, the Licking River was widely used through all the different areas there. So I don't doubt it at all. And you're right there pretty close to the Ohio. So I would think they probably used it a lot for, hunting grounds and getting things from one place to the other.
Yeah, it's a good possibility.
But I really think too, like some of the negative stuff you feel there could go back to just simply when it was a slaughterhouse. I mean, I don't want to get in the debate. We don't have time for it if animals have souls. But I still have to say it probably wasn't the happiest day of all those animals' lives. Those things, I believe they leave an imprint.
Well, even, you don't even have to bring the soul into it. The slaughterhouse used to be basically a machine for killing animals, and it wasn't putting the animals at ease. It was just crowding them in there. They were crowded. It was noisy, the smell of blood and stuff. So the animals would have been like hyped up anyway.
Yeah, that's true. Well, one of the coolest parts of our whole entire investigation was in the attic. And we call it attic. It is actually where Carl's apartment was. Now, what I will say about the whole entire building as a whole, it was falling apart. It was falling down. Jackie, at one point you said there was a 6x6 beam and you could almost put your finger through it.
Yeah. In the basement, holding up the building.
Holding up the building. There was a couple 2x4s that was holding the ceiling over top of the bar. I feel like if anybody touched those, it was coming down.
And there were no straight lines anymore.
Everything was curved. And
I mean, when we went, they were kind of past the point of wanting people to even go upstairs.
Yeah.
Remember, they told us like 2 or 3 at a time.
Yeah.
No,
And they weren't supposed to let us upstairs.
Well, I like that guy. He's like, this store here, we generally tell people, he's like, if I get a group of ghost hunters in here, you know, I I say something a little different. But if I get inexperienced people here, we tell them, don't go up there. He says, now you guys look like you know what you're doing, so I'm just going to pass it on by.
Yeah, this is the stairs. It goes up. Is basically what he told us. Um,
If you
we,
fall through the floor, it's not our problem.
yeah,
We didn't tell you could go up there.
yeah. So that's kind of what it was coming down to. So, it was Carl's apartment. You can only get into like half of it. It was really starting to fall apart up there. Um, I brought the SLS up. I had something crawling in the ceiling and like trying to come out. We did sensory depth up there. You guys remember your experiences up there?
Yeah, I didn't do sensory depth, but listening to the other people and stuff. And Carrie was there, and she did sensory depth, and she talked to Carl himself. And basically, the story behind it was there was an exorcism there. Carl felt he was possessed by some sort of demonic presence and stuff, and they did do an exorcism. And I think they decided the exorcism didn't work. But in sensory depth, Carl told us they brought the demon there.
Like it was summoned by them, like they were trying to make something happen.
I got the feeling of that.
Yeah. I mean, it was honestly just standing in the. I can remember standing in the room, listening to the sensory depth, asking the questions. I had, like I said, I had LSLS, and I would just kind of walk to the edge where I really couldn't, trying to hold it in there because I want to see what's happening in this little part that's kind of roped off now. And all of a sudden I'm going up toward the ceiling and I've got something looking at me. Like the way it's trying to come out and crawl out, I'm like, I, I, I don't know what this is. However, I don't feel you should be up there. Like it shouldn't be there. I can remember that. I mean, the sensory depth stuff. We got some good answers. We got some that actually gave us more questions than it was an answer.
Shocking.
um,
Do we know
That
like
never happens.
when it started being labeled as haunted? Like when did that come about?
I think a lot of it came through
Carl.
Carl and Bobby Mackey's, and they had security cameras up and started having things happen on those security cameras, like, you know, chairs being knocked off of tables just randomly. And then you had, Carl who lived there and took care of the place, and he was also like a security, so when he'd walk around, things were happening while he's walking around. He would hear voices, he would see people. And he started talking to other ones. And then from there, it just kind of, okay, what's going on? And I believe the first people that came in, ghost hunted, and started finding some really weird stuff, but they couldn't find answers to that that weirdness. They were trying to figure it all out. And I would think a lot of stories came out of that, that probably shouldn't. Somebody found the name Johanna somehow and how it was a mafia's daughter and she performed there, but there's no record of that. And Jackie, you've even said it, being a showgirl in a speakeasy was not a high class job. Right?
Yeah.
And you wouldn't find a mafia boss's daughter doing it. Right?
Right. But like I say, that I've heard the other version that he was a dealer at the casino, and being the mafia boss's daughter, she could have met him just by simply
Being at the casino,
right,
but not
dancing or
not
anything like
dancing or
that.
being
Yeah.
anything, part of that part. She could have just been there as a guest and found this guy. So it is a possibility that she was there. There's just no real history about it.
Well, there's no, for the people that when it was supposed to happen, the people that owned the club, the one did have a daughter, but her name was Suzanne, and I guess the ages and stuff didn't correlate. And the other one, I think, didn't have a daughter at all. So what we're doing is we're assuming that it was those mob bosses, but there might have been other bosses that came with the daughter or
Yeah.
stuff like that. But we don't have any proof, so we can't say definitively definitively that yes, there was a girl, Johanna, there that killed herself, died, whatever.
Well, but the one that where the girl, lost her head and all this kind of stuff, it happened just down from there.
Right.
Had nothing to do really with the slaughterhouse that was there at the time.
And I think they actually believe that she was killed in Cincinnati, and they brought her across the bridge, thinking that and to dispose of the body, or she might have been still alive, that the abortion had been botched and stuff, and they brought her across the bridge thinking that it would be better. I don't know. So,
But the big thing on that is that was actually true. There is history that's based on that. Two guys were, arrested, tried, and hung from that.
and they were the last ones hung in Newport.
Yeah. And there was no head. They were never able to find the head from what we
They've
found.
never found the head. And the police did look in the tunnel that was in the slaughterhouse. I got to bring up something about Johanna, though.
Yeah.
We have no proof that anybody died there or anything, but this was the three of us, our first investigation. But I had been to Bobby Mackey's 2 or 3 times before, and the basement's dirt. He hadn't had it cleaned out as much. There was a room full of junk. There was me and 2 other guys down there. I was the only female. I do not wear perfume when I'm ghost hunting. And all 3 of us smelled the smell of roses.
I recall that. Yep.
So,
Yeah.
and Johanna was supposed to be known for her rose perfume.
I believe there is a female haunting there. I don't know that it's anywhere near the history of what is, or false history, rumors, legends, more like it at this point for
Mhm.
there. But I don't think what is there had anything to do with any of that. I'm going back to with what Carl said. They brought something.
Well, as far as
It's right.
Why or who?
the darker side of it, again, I don't like to say the word demonic. It has to be totally different, but the darker side or the more evil side, I think they brought that in. I think they called it in somehow. Might have been accidental, might not have been. Nobody knows. But I do believe that they brought that in. Now, I think before that, there was other stuff going on there. The mafia, a lot of times, were not nice people.
No.
Yeah, I don't think there are any demons there. I think there are people that were evil as living beings, and they're still evil in death.
Well, I still believe that there's something that they called in. I don't know if it was human.
Maybe not, but I still don't think I would label it as a demon.
No, I wouldn't label it as demon.
An entity that's not,
I mean,
a basket of roses, but
we've ran into other entities that have not been nice, but not demons.
Or it could be a human entity with an attachment, because we've ran into that too.
True.
So,
I mean, it's hard telling, overall as far as that goes. But yeah, I think there was stuff happening before. You had the mafia that was happening there. You had Indian, property that they spanned all across, northern Kentucky and Ohio, around the Ohio Licking River, and all of the other ones around. There's so many layers to Bobby Mackey's, and I think it's all just kind of meshing into one place. Now, that being said, Bobby Mackey's, the building is no longer there. They've demolished it because it was very unsafe. Bobby Mackey's does have another place right now. They're talking about rebuilding on the same property. But we kind of want to see if we can go back and just check the property itself and see if there's anything still there, right?
I mean, I would like to go and see with nothing there. And if they rebuild it, I definitely want to go
check that
just
out.
to see, what transpires. But
that
it'd be
is one of the
interesting.
reasons why we did Bobby Mackey's, because it's always been my plan to do it right before it was demolished, so that you guys had a chance to do it and stuff, and then to do it when it reopens.
You know what would be really interesting is if they would let people ghost hunt where they're temporarily located right now, which is in Florence, Kentucky,
Yeah.
just to see if,
See if anything followed them.
yeah,
Well, we could. We just have to start going to the bar and drinking and bring a recorder and just sit there and see.
yeah,
Go to the bathroom a lot.
Yeah. Well, on the same point of that is when Bobby Mackey's was fully closed, they know that they were going to demolish. They actually got rid of some of their stuff on that building, whether they sold it or
Yeah, they had an auction.
they had an auction on it. Is there anything attached to that stuff? And that's something that I would really like to try to keep an eye on and maybe try to contact some of the people that got it.
I might have a sort of half answer to that. When I was at Bobby Mackey's, gotten into rune stones and I started making my own rune stones by gathering up 25 rocks at the property, which I did in Bobby Mackey's.
That was
Well,
the time we were in the basement. I was looking for her, and she was
I was
crawled up.
crawling, sometimes belly crawling
Uh-huh.
through the dirt and stuff. And I got 25. I actually got more. I got about 50 stones because you never know. I made a set of rune stones and I fully intended to keep it for me. I got them done and I couldn't use them. I did not like them. I just hated them. I thought about throwing them away. I asked Laura, I said, would you hold these and let me know what you think? And Laura, she held them. She's like, well, they're okay. I said, do you hate them? Because I want to throw them away. She said, no, I don't hate them. So I would take those rune stones with me when I did shows. And it is amazing. People, I would tell them, the rune stones, feel free to touch them if you want. And I would tell them, these are from Bobby Mackey's. Do you know Bobby Mackey's? And most of them would go, yes. I said, would you like to hold them? And they would go, no. They wanted nothing to do with those rune stones.
I mean, it really is amazing how some places can get a name for itself. The biggest thing about ghost hunting is trying to prove, like we go at it from a different angle from a lot of other people, I feel. And with that, we try to prove, disprove, or maybe try to get an answer for a question that we find going on, right? So let's take Waverly, for example. We've all been to Waverly. I've been there a couple times. Jackie, I know you've been there a few times. Laura, I think you've been there once.
what?
So there's different things that's going on. A lot of people talk about the death tunnel. I've been there twice and never once felt anything weird in the death tunnel. Like everybody's like, oh, there's evil. And yeah, you get, like, there was one time I saw a shadow in there, and you're going to at Waverly. Waverly is a shadow-based place. I mean, they have a lot of stuff going on there. Can I say that shadow was a worker? Maybe. Could I say it was a dead person? Probably
Well,
not.
At that time, it was a dead person, but
But I'm saying somebody that died inside the place. I don't think so. I think it was more work-based. I feel things differently than other people. A lot of people, I think, get creeped out about things. Bobby Mackey's is one of those places. I think that they hear the rumors, they hear the stories, and they want to try to correlate.
It's the mindset you approach it with.
And
Just like I think the things that they auctioned off, I believe if those people focus energy on that being haunted, it will be.
Yeah.
But I think if it just gets discarded as a random brick, it no longer holds power.
What do you feel about that, Jackie?
I was going to kind of agree with you, but my daughter went on vacation. She was at a museum. She's not a ghost hunter. She bought this doll. It's made out of metal. It's beautiful. She brought it home, and for some reason it was in like a cage, like with bars on it and stuff. I don't know why. But she brought it home, and I'm like, that thing's haunted. And I took a picture of it, and I sent it to Psychic Donna, and she said, well, I need to touch it. And I said, no, it's in Virginia. It's not coming home with me and stuff. When I go to my daughter's house, the statue, and I call her the princess. I call her Princess Banana Pants, but she's like Princess Banana Hammock. She's got a name for her, something like that. Her head does rotate, and that's the only thing that rotates on her, and it bobs a bit. The minute I get there, I mark where that is and where the head is looking at, and that damn doll moves. And I also found that doll can stare at you because you can feel eyes on you, and when you look, her head's not even turned towards you, but you know she's been staring at you. Now, my daughter, you met my daughter. She doesn't do ghost at all, so I don't
that's
think it's her.
But that's an item for something to attach to. So that I believe it doesn't matter if you want it or not. It either is it or it isn't. But a brick, when there's a lot of bricks, I think you have to pull it to what it has a reference to.
Yeah. Well, I mean, overall, we're going to have another investigation of Bobby Mackey's, but it's not going to be with the Bobby Mackey building. So this will be a two-parter, but at a different time, because I want to go back and do the property.
Yeah.
I want to check it out. I want to see what's going on, and if we can get into the new building, that would be even better too. We'll see what we can do.
Well, again, and it's tough being a ghost hunter because sometimes you got to make sacrifices. We may have to drink.
I know.
So we'll see on that. So, as far as the overall investigation of Bobby Mackey's, I feel, yes, there's hauntings, there.
Yes.
There was stuff going on there. Can it all be proven? No. Overall feelings on Bobby Mackey's real quick.
Here's the thing also. I think there's only one thing, and I've watched for her, and that might be the shadow. Supposedly there was a car wreck outside the place, I don't know, many years ago, and the lady died, and people have seen her like running through the building. Other than that, that's the only haunting that I've heard that actually has anything to do with Bobby Mackey's. It's all the slaughterhouse or the mafia and stuff.
Yeah, I think it's just reference to his Bobby Mackey's because that's what it is in our generation.
Yeah. All right. Well, with that, I feel like this podcast explains a lot of good stuff and bad stuff about Bobby Mackey's and where we can go from there. I know I feel that this podcast, we try to urge people to go out and ghost hunt. We try to, and tell you guys what's safe, what's not, and what you have to watch for. Bobby Mackey's, of course, is no longer there. I think it's a place where you have to be careful on what you're doing and how you're doing it.
Oh, it's a portal.
Yeah.
Just because it wasn't open while we were there, it's still a portal, and anything can come through those.
Yeah. So, what else do you guys think about Bobby Mackey's overall as a whole? If, let's say, they were to rebuild and there is activity, how would you approach it next?
I think, number one, I think there is going to be an activity. You got rid of the building, but do the ghosts know that?
Gotcha.
Yeah, I don't know that the energy is connected to the building. I think it's to the space.
All right.
But I also think you have to be careful, and we'll have to go in not thinking, oh, we're going to run into the leg breaker in the bathroom. Oh, we're gonna smell the rose perfume. We're going to have to go in like we've never been there before and to see if there is anything different.
All right. Well, with that, this has been Not Just Ghost Stories. I've been your host, Josh.
Laura?
And Jackie.
And you can find us anytime on Facebook at Not Just Ghost Stories or contact us on our website at notjustghoststories.com.